Hey guys, welcome back to Empty Outdoors. Today we're going to be teaching you how to European an elk skull. Today we got this big 6-point and a few other ones we're putting in the pot. The method we're using today is the liquid oil peroxide method. This method is a little bit easier if you got a large quantity of skulls to do. And stay tuned and see how they turn out. Alright, well, after you got your elk heads skinned, extra meat taken off of them, the eyeballs taken out, you're going to be filling a pot full of water. You're going to want to make sure you have a pot that's big enough to hold your elk head with being able to get the whole thing in there. Alright, so this is when you start adding the first chemicals. The first boil is super important because this is the boil that will knock most of the meat off. So first things first, I'm going to need some Dawn. Just put a splash of that in there. And then this baking soda, that's a 5-pound container. I'm going to put about half of this in there, and this will help break down all that meat and extra stuff that's on the skull. Perfect. Alright, so we got this one cleaned up. We already got those two in the pot. We're going to be putting these ones in there. There it is. Alrighty, so we got all 4 of the heads sitting in the pot. One thing you're really gonna want to pay attention to is the temperature. You never want to get these things to a full boil because it will cause damage on the skull. That's something you really don't want to have to deal with. So these are going to sit in there for probably about 2 hours at about 185 degrees just until the meat starts peeling off. Then we'll get back to you with the pressure washer. Alright, as you can tell, the meat is really starting to fall off this thing. I think this one sat in there for 3 hours. The pot never got over 185 degrees. And now it's time to take the pressure washer to it. Alrighty, as you can see, we got most of the meat off of it. When you're pressure washing, and I highly recommend you have a pair of bibs or an apron because that part of the job can get pretty messy. But now we're moving on to the next step. You got to do these few steps here before you can put it into the second boil. As you can tell, got it pretty clean for the most part. And if you roll it over, still a little bit of meat there. But this next thing I'm going to show you makes it really easy to get into the brain and get the rest of the meat off. Alright, so for this next part, what you're going to need is a flathead screwdriver and a hammer. Right here on the back of the elk's head, there's these ear butts, which that's the only thing that's between there and the brain cavity. So if you use a screwdriver, you can pound in there. As you can see, there's the edge of the earbuds there, and you can pry those earbuds out just like that. This doesn't damage the skull or anything, it just makes it easier so you can get in there and get that rest of the gross stuff out. once you get those ear butts off, there's a thin layer of bone here between the brain cavity. So you just take the hammer, knock all that stuff loose. Perfect. Now you can get in there and get the rest of the brain out. Alright, so now that we got the ear butts off, everything's broken up inside the brain cavity there. Makes it really helpful if you got a long pair of pliers or forceps like I got here, to get in there and pull that brain out. Get in there, hook onto the brain, give it a few twists. There it is. Sometimes it comes out in pieces. There we go. And now, the back of the skull's clean enough for the second boil. Alrighty, so now that we've got the brain out and the ear butts taken out, we're ready for the final step before we put it into the second boil. If you look into the nasal cavity here on this elk, it's got that long piece of cartilage. We're gonna be going in there and pulling that out. A lot of people have their own preferences, whether they keep the cartilage in here on both sides, and in my opinion I kind of like the looks of it, so we're gonna keep it in on this one. Alrighty, so we're gonna be taking this piece out, just that middle section here. Sometimes it makes it easy on you. You don't have to break the cartilage or the nasal bones there on the side. A pair of forceps or needle nose pliers really make this type of work here go by a lot easier. Alrighty. Now if you look into the nasal cavity, as you can tell, that long strip of cartilage there in the center is gone, and this bowl is ready for the second boil. Alright, so we move back over here. We're using the same pot we were using before. We just cleaned it out. Now we're going to fill it up. Alright, so now that we've got the pot full of water, what we're going to be doing now is just adding some more Dawn. There's no exact measurements, just put a lot more Dawn in the second boil here than the first boil. And what that will do is help break down the rest of the meat. We got probably 85% of the meat off the skull, and it'll also help degrease the skull so it doesn't turn yellow over time. Alright, so now that he's in here, it'll sit in the second boil, the degreasing boil is what I call it, for probably about 2 hours. And instead of the 185, it'll be more of just a slow simmer, about 175 to 165. And once that's done, we'll get the pressure washer out again and spread the rest of the meat off. Alright guys, it's been another 2 hours. We let them soak, And now I'm gonna throw my apron back on, and we're gonna get the rest of the meat off this guy. That boil he just came out of really helps get the meat loosened up off the back of here. Alright, as you can tell, we got pretty much every piece of meat off this thing. There's a few little tiny pieces and bits here and there, but those will come off in the peroxide. So now we're going to get them wrapped up and get them ready for the whitening process. This part is actually super important. We're going to be wrapping the antlers. If you don't wrap the antlers, there's a chance that the peroxide can get up on the antlers and you don't want them to get peroxided. So that's what we're doing now. I just use this plastic wrap or saran wrap. Wrap around the bases a few times because that's where the peroxide will try to soak up into the rest of the antlers there. Now that we've got the antlers wrapped on the elk, we're moving into the whitening process. This is the product we use for our liquid boil process on the whitening. It is just a 27% peroxide. You can pick it up at your local spa or pool place, and it works great. The solution we use for this product is 3 gallons of water per 1 gallon of this. In our instance, we have a 12-gallon pot here. So we got our formula made up already. Like I said earlier in the video, this process, the liquid version of the whitening, is a lot better if you're doing a large quantity of skulls, because we do quite a few here, and we're able to keep them right here in these buckets, and we can reuse them. We use these for probably about 30 heads before we have to make up a new batch. In our case here, we have 2 elk heads in the pot, so we're going to get them situated so they sit in there all right. And we're bringing this peroxide. It started out cold, it was in the buckets, and we're going to keep them in the pot until the peroxide just starts turning into a rolling boil. As soon as they turn into a rolling boil, we're going to take them out and clean them off. Alright, we got them out of the peroxide, laying over here. And what we're going to do now is spray them off, and this will get all the peroxide off and knock off all the loose little pieces of meat if there are any left. Got them all sprayed off, got all that loose meat sprayed off there and cleaned up. Now we're gonna dip this guy in the peroxide one more time. This second dip here will keep him in there for 20 to 30 seconds. What this does is allows the peroxide to stay activated and keep whitening it as it dries overnight. Just like that. Let them drain out so we save ourselves some peroxide. And there it is. We're going to let them dry for 24 hours and we'll get back to you with the final result. Hey guys, here he is. We waited just over 24 hours, made sure he was nice and dry, and he whitened up greatly. It's gonna look awesome on the wall. So if you enjoyed this video or learned anything from it, please like and subscribe, and check us out on Instagram at Empty Outdoors, and we'll catch you next time.